Brian Foster, and this is the Grindhouse Institute. On each episode of this podcast, Jeremy Floyd and I program a triple feature movie night. Each of the movies share common themes, and we discuss them here. We're happy you could join us for today's block we call the original Scream Trilogy. That's correct, today we'll be discussing the original 3 Scream films, the 90s franchise that tapped into the zeitgeist of metaculture and celebrated the slasher films of the 70s and 80s. The first movie was written by a then up-and-coming screenwriter and directed by a horror veteran. It was a mega hit, breathing new life into the struggling horror movie genre, and instantly became a classic. A year after the brutal murder of her mother, Sidney Prescott becomes the target of a masked caller with a penchant for movies, horror trivia, and murder. Along with her group of friends, Sidney must survive the Woodsboro murders by avoiding some well-known horror movie tropes. Neve Campbell, Skeet Ulrich, and Matthew Lillard star in Scream from 1996. Now in college, Sidney Prescott's dreams of becoming an actress are becoming a reality. But those dreams turn into nightmares when Sidney is again threatened by a ghost-faced killer. This time, the murders are kicked off at the premiere of Stab, the movie based on the events of the Woodsboro murders. Who could the killer, or killers, be this time? Courtney Cox, Timothy Olyphant, and Laurie Metcalf star in Scream 2 from 1997. The production of Stab 3 is brought to a halt when a masked killer yet again begins murdering. This time, however, Ghostface seems to be following a script for the movie that is still in production. So if the cast is killed off, how will they make the movie? It's all very meta. Meanwhile, the now isolated Sidney Prescott starts receiving familiar, threatening phone calls which prompt her to head to Hollywood to solve the mystery. David Arquette, Scott Foley, Carrie Fisher, Jay, and Silent Bob star in Scream 3 from 2000. Thank you for listening to the Grindhouse Institute. Please enjoy. All right, welcome back to the Grindhouse Institute. I'm Brian Foster, and with me as always is Jeremy Floyd. Hello, and how are you?
This isn't Jeremy.
Listen, I am 2 seconds away from calling the police.
Do you like scary movies, Brian?
Ooh, that sounded pretty good. Nice. So what is your favorite scary movie, Jeremy?
Ooh, I don't know.
Yeah.
Prince of Darkness,
All
Halloween,
right. Yeah.
The Shining,
Carpenter and Kubrick.
Exorcist. Yeah,
Okay.
somewhere in there.
Somewhere in there. That would be quite a Frankenstein movie, wouldn't it? Pretty awesome movie, right? Put all this together.
Yeah, it's the Ready Player One of horror. Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah, it's kind of all the hits. Put them all in one. Today's show, we're going to be talking about the original trilogy of Scream, Scream 1, 2, and 3. And with us, we have a very special guest talking about Scream. Jeremy, please do the intro.
absolutely. So we're talking horror again, as no stranger to the show, but as he has pointed out to me several times, it turns out that Scream is not only his favorite movie, but his favorite franchise, and maybe a favorite movie of all time. So we had to bring him in for this one. Johnny Berchtold.
What's up? Yeah, maybe I talk about Scream a bit too much, but you know what? Maybe it's my
Talk
entire
about
personality.
dressing. Yeah.
Was that hyperbole or was that for real that this is your favorite film of all time?
It is my everything. And when I say that, I'm not being.
Oh, yeah.
It's the movie that, for 2 things for me, that made me want to be an actor, and that solidified me as a lifelong horror fan. Because
Awesome.
I think by the
Wow.
time that I watched it, I had seen all of the movies it was referencing. So it was just like, oh, this is what it means to be a horror fan.
Because it was interesting. This movie appealed to everyone because it was so great, and it did poke fun at a lot. But if you didn't have all the references, you wouldn't get all the jokes. So it also made it appealing to people that did like or grew up with 80s horror, and then all of a sudden they've got this brand new franchise that might be poking fun at a little, but also a full tribute to all that stuff too.
Oh yeah,
Definitely celebrating.
Yeah, celebration of all of it.
It's some might say the peak of cinema. Maybe should have swept at the Oscars.
It's all been downhill from Scream.
Yeah, I was gonna say nothing's come out that's even been close.
I mean, snubbed at the Oscars that year and every year following. Just saying.
But it is fantastic, and going back and revisiting this, I hadn't seen this in a long time. But man, the first movie is still very good, very, very, very good. I enjoyed it from the get-go, and I forgot my favorite part of it was Henry Winkler's principal. Man,
I forgot he was in it.
And the cue of school's out after he dies.
Exactly. That was so great.
And speaking of, like, I mean, they were just on par with the musical cues, the cameos, and, like, yeah, for sure. And great cameo.
Yeah, the guy that did the music, the score for the film, that Marco Beltrami. I mean, first of all, I think that this is like kind of how he got started, was this film, and it was just so punchy and great, especially for a slasher film. But he went on to do The Hurt Locker and like A Quiet Place, two films where sound was like such an important thing, and so interesting.
Yes, maybe I also listened to Marco's scores in the car, like a psycho.
We all go a little mad sometimes.
We do. Maybe all the time. No, this movie, I mean, the original one too, is like, I've always described it as like, there's like an electricity in the movie that like you really feel, especially in the third act, when they're all in the kitchen. It's just like, oh my God, this movie is perfect. It really is. I love it. It's so good. And Neve Campbell, the entire cast is hot. But like Neve Campbell was like my everything as a kid. And then of course Skeet is there. I'm like, and Matthew Lillard, performance of a lifetime.
Yeah. I agree. He was fantastic.
Tongue of a lifetime. Yeah.
Stu was so great.
So good.
Feel a little woozy here.
I do have to mention, I saw an unauthorized musical parody of Scream years ago. And right before the twist of like the reveal of who the killers are, they asked the audience, has anyone not seen Scream? And if there was a single person who had not seen it, they don't do the ending. Instead, they just do like an alternate ending. And one person had not seen the movie. And so what the alternate ending was just letting the actor who played Stu just say all of the lines in the iconic Matthew Lillard performance. And
like
just one after another. Just one after another. I was like, this is amazing.
It's actually a good substitute, for not getting the actual
mad
ending.
At me.
It was like, okay, we won't spoil the movie, but you cannot live another second without these line deliveries.
Without these inside jokes, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh By the end, everything is just such a madhouse and a blood fest that when he keeps picking up the phone and it's just real casual, hello, and it's Campbell on the other side, the other line, messing with him now. It's so fantastic.
Oh God! And just like we, my fiance Casey and I, we have for Halloween have been 6 of the original Scream characters so far. So we've been Casey Becker, as you can see behind me in this framed photo, and Ghostface. Classic. And then we've also done Billy and Sydney in the finale. And then we've also, this year we did Dewey and Gail. So we're just working our way through. I was like, next year we can put a doggy door around your head and you can be Tatum, and I'll put a TV on mine and I can be Stu.
That's right. That is how Stu gets it. Yeah.
Oh yeah. He gets the prime time bitch.
Yeah, I was gonna say, welcome to prime time, bitch.
Yeah. That's so good.
You just mentioned Dewey and Gail. Such a cool, consistent couple throughout all of these movies, and that Twin Peaks-esque Dewey theme that pops up every time Dewey kind of comes. That
negative. Hold on, we need to pause for a second. That is not a Twin Peaks song. That is straight out of Broken Arrow. So like,
come on,
the Dewey theme song that came in Scream 2 and has sort of followed him ever since was temp music they used in the edit, I guess. And it was just music from the previous year's John Woo, John Travolta, and Christian Slater movie, Broken Arrow, by Hans Zimmer.
I know that movie well. Yeah.
Yeah. So that song that's playing is the Hans Zimmer song.
I will never take that seriously again if I watch Broken Arrow. Not that I could take Broken Arrow seriously.
As a diehard John Woo fan, as like watching Scream 2 for the first time for this podcast, I was like, wait a minute, that's Broken Arrow.
Oh, you were angry. You did get a little heated just now. I think you can just simmer down a little.
You scared me.
We might have struck a nerve.
Yeah. Well, if you turn around, I'll be outside your window. So we know how this podcast ends, right?
Bloodshed.
Those two are my favorite characters throughout this, and I think they're the only ones that really kind of maintain I guess the roots of the first movie. You know, even when 4 comes around, that's kind of, well, I think 3, it feels more detached than anything, and you're no longer like part of the Woodsboro, but at least you've got those people that kind of keep things consistent and back home.
Yeah, I was reading an article today too, actually, about how that relationship is ultimately the heartbeat of the franchise, because you're right, they're the most consistent. I mean, Sydney has her journey, but everyone that's tied to her origins is dead by the first movie. So, so they're like that sort of heartbeat of the franchise that we also got to see develop as like the real actors, because of course everyone knows they met on the first Scream, were married by the second one, and then divorced by the fourth one. Like, you know, so like it's really interesting to see it get mirrored in the films, but like it's something that you can always rely on too, to like, you know, you're going to get that relationship plot line, because
and that one Dewey Riley monologue that he'll give, you know, like, you know, I'm not one of those kind of guys, man, because I'm a very complicated person. He goes through like those little rants that it's just perfect.
Oh yeah.
How do you know that my dim-witted inexperience isn't merely a subtle form of manipulation used to lower people's expectations, thereby enhancing my ability to effectively maneuver within any given situation?
And obviously we can't talk about Scream without talking about the opening. It's one of the most iconic openings of all time.
Well, yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Is that, a throwback to, you know, Psycho having a big star being offed by the villain close to the beginning of the film?
Of course.
You know? Yeah.
And like, okay, I was maybe like 1.5 years old when the movie came out. So obviously I didn't know, I didn't go see the film. I had to wait until I could rent it at the video store. Well, I guess I'm not that good of a Die Hard fan then, huh?
Yeah, I was going to say Die Hard horror.
Wow, yeah, okay.
Yeah, your credentials have just been taken away, buddy.
You know, I will say though, back when I worked at the movie theater,
you took away your knife.
You'd be surprised. No, not my knife. You'd be surprised at how many people would bring in their babies to see horror movies. I'm like,
yeah.
Wow.
All right, if I was a dad, I probably would also do that. But anyway, so I don't think I realized until later, once I, you know, grew up and realized like, oh, killing off Drew Barrymore was like a big deal, because she was, and she was positioned to be Sydney. I think she signed on as Sydney, and then
really?
The story goes, and they've talked about this. She's talked about this even recently on the Drew Barrymore show, but she convinced Wes Craven to let her be the opening kill. She said it's going to be so much more impactful, and I was like, oh my god.
And it still is.
And how do you, like, who would have been that opening kill had it not been her? Especially, you know, it's so iconic because it was such a big name. Like, I guess that wasn't always the intention. So like, it's so cool to see like they really captured lightning in a bottle with this movie, because so many things happen in that way where it's like, they talk about this all the time in interviews about how they didn't realize what they were making when they were making it. And like, that's one of those things, like, you know, but like Drew Barrymore knew. She said people are going to be, she knew.
Yeah.
I think her performance is awesome in that. And you really feel that she's being terrorized by this ghost face, this voice, you know, on the other line. And then to have her boyfriend be gutted right in front of her, you know, I mean, it's a lot to go through. And then she gets gutted and hung from a tree, only to be found by her parents. You know, it's like this big, like, none of the other intros. And although I do like the intro for Scream 2, I think Jada Pinkett did a great job, and Omar Epps, but I think that the first, nothing could stand up to that first one, unless Scream 5 is one that has another good opener. I don't know, but please, let's not talk about that. Disclosure, I haven't seen the 5th one yet. Yeah,
I will not spoil.
You're really setting yourself up for spoilers there.
Yeah. I'm like, well, let me tell you.
Oh, you have no idea what happens.
I also do love how we always talk about Drew Barrymore being the first to be killed in Scream when she is not at all. It's her boyfriend, Steven.
Right. Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Or maybe even Sydney's mom, because that kicks off the plot.
Yeah.
But that's backstory. So.
But that's backstory.
True. Yeah.
I will say, do you guys have movies where like that are so nostalgic to you in a way that like all of the inflections of the way every line is delivered is memorable to you, like the way they
ingrained.
say those. Yes, I mean
Yeah.
that's Scream for me, and the way she delivers all of those lines in that opening scene is just I know every note of like her voice when it goes up and the way she delivers every line. It's just she's big and he plays football and I'll get that shit out of
Yeah.
it.
It's almost like she's singing it, right?
Yes, like come on, it deserves to be a musical.
But man,
Makes sense.
Speaking of sort of the musical feel of it, it's like that sequence where she kind of, I don't know, throws open the door and then she like, closes it and she throws the phone down and it starts ringing again and then she starts screaming again. Like that, like series of beats, just, you're right. Like, it has that sort of musical timing. Like there's this like really, like staged, but also
theatrical in a way.
effortless flow to it. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's kind of a theatrical thing, and it's I mean, I haven't seen this movie well nearly as much as you, Johnny, but I'm sure not even as much as you, Brian. But like that scene in particular, I think, I mean, even out of context, I feel like I've seen that scene, and maybe even I feel like the first teaser trailer for this movie was just bits of that scene.
I think so.
And it's like, you basically, it was like bits of that. And then, maybe David Arquette doing the little like flashlight under his face. Are you scared?
Oh, yeah.
Like, that kind of thing. And maybe just a handful of other, little lines. But like that became so iconic, I think also because of sort of how, the marketing was rolled out for it and how everyone was first introduced to it. Even before they saw the movie type of thing.
Well, I mean, it's kind of amazing. You look at the poster now, Drew Barrymore's the biggest one on the poster.
Yeah.
Oh, right, yeah.
She was the main character. That's why I'm saying it's like it was so interesting. You could get away with marketing in a way that it's a little bit more difficult now. I mean, just look at Blair Witch Project. Of course, that became what it was because everyone thought it was real because of the marketing. You can't really do that now, but it was so cool. But just to go back to those beats of not just that sequence, but like all of the sequences in the film that Wes Craven like totally knew. Of course, he's a horror legend, but like pacing is everything in a horror movie, and he nailed it with that opening scene because it like totally sets the tone, and like you're like, all right, we're in for a ride.
You're going to need editing and things like that and other tricks because a lot of those kills in that movie take place in lit up areas, like that entire first sequence is in that lit up home. The garage where Tatum is killed, like that's a lit up garage. You see everything. They don't really do a lot of playing with the shadows like Halloween did at one point, Yeah.
It's a very poppy type of movie in the way that it's like, I was thinking about this recently and, Scream 4 is kind of infamous for having that like weird glow over it. I don't know if you guys.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll get there.
Like the bloom. Yeah.
Yeah. But it almost looks like it's some YA sort of, and I think that's why. But like in a way that like I think that's why it works so well because it's like it's so self-aware on what it is, in that like it can get away with doing those sequences in very well lit areas, and it looks so good.
How funny was it seeing, I guess, sort of earlier on when Neve Campbell's first being sort of terrorized, and she goes to like dial the phone on her computer.
Yeah, what was that?
They never bring that up again either.
Never bring it up again.
I didn't even know you could do that, and I still don't know. If
I didn't know you could do that. And I lived through that era. I mean, and also like this is like it's like okay, this is early or mid '90s, right? And it's like, or I guess it's technically late '90s, but the so they had to make a big deal about a cellular telephone, and yet she's like, dialing 911 on
the best line is, what are you doing with a cellular device? He's like, well, everyone's
got him, Sheriff.
I'm like, but that's also, it's really interesting to see the rest of the entries because they always do play with what's trendy in, they're always dated, but they're purposefully dated. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
By the time they get to 4, we're talking about Facebook and Twitter and
or that Google Glass thing the guy had or whatever.
Oh yeah, exactly. So it's really like time capsule. Every single movie is like very time capsule.
I agree. Yeah.
No. Yeah, I mean, this one was such a time capsule. It's like Courtney Cox and Matthew Lillard, I don't know, were just such like that era of the 90s. It's like, Matthew Lillard was just off of like Hackers, where he had the same very extremely over the top performance, but with a much better haircut.
Much better haircut, yeah. Love Hackers.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry.
But all I was saying was just like, this movie obviously set sort of this like cultural benchmark off of it, but it also like going into it with, some of the people who are sort of famous coming into it, like, they already embodied that time and space so well. Like you're saying, Johnny, it's like, that time capsule thing. It's like, it really sort of captured like that moment.
I mean, and just look at every opening of every movie in the franchise. They always put some big, very popular, I mean, not always, but like they always, I mean, they're famous for the cameos, obviously. And even having like Jada in the second one. And
well, okay, so you're talking about like how Drew Barrymore was big on the poster in the first one. So I'd never seen the second one. And so watching it for the first time, I was like, oh, we're introducing new characters. Like, and it's like, I knew what the poster looked like. I knew there was like the two eyes in the background, one blue, one brown. It looked like possibly Jada was in the background, and she was on the poster as well. And I was like, okay, she's gonna be with this new character. Well, Omar Epps isn't gonna make it. He's got a knife in the air. Okay, but she's gonna. No, never mind. I guess not.
Yeah. Oh god.
I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the scary movie version of the Omar Epps kill. I don't know if you remember that, but instead of a knife through the head, he gets a dick through his ear.
Oh yeah.
There were quite a few moments watching these movies where I got like confused, and I was like,
yes,
is the thing going to happen with the scary movie thing?
Every time Ghostface gets like hit in the face, and like he takes one real hard, like it really reminds me of like the scary movie.
But I was thinking the one when Billy Loomis, also the Halloween reference, I would assume there, right?
Yeah.
But Billy Loomis tastes the blood, and he's like, corn syrup, this is what they used in Carrie. But then the other, he's like, I think he said like corn syrup. This is what my dad used to put on my pancakes.
No, he goes ketchup, just like my mom used to put on my spaghetti. And I'll say I love the scary movies, especially like the first couple or whatever. But nothing made me more angry than when I was a kid telling people, "Oh, my favorite movie, Scream," and I'd basically just be doing what I'm doing now, and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, I love when Cindy is hiding from." And I'm like, "No, you have it wrong." And she picks up the banana and tries to call him. I'm like, "No, wrong movie."
Abort!
Oh, and then the penis goes through the ear. Yeah, I'm like, wait, no. There is no.
It's so frustrating, right?
Yeah,
like,
I'm like nobody. Yeah, nobody gets stabbed in the ear with a dick in Scream. Different movie.
Oh my god!
I think we've gotten a little off track.
Yeah, I'm like, wait, what are we talking about?
I mean, but then again, guys, it's the millennium. Motives are incidental.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, this conversation is starting to sound like something Wes Carpenter would do.
Did you guys dig when they had the janitor in there looking just like Freddy Krueger? And I think that might have looked like Wes Craven. Actually, was it Wes Craven?
Oh yeah, played by Wes Craven.
That's amazing that he would go ahead and do that.
Yeah,
like,
his Hitchcock cameo.
My God, you have to. If you're gonna reference anything, you got to put it. I mean, they reference his career a billion times in that. I mean, they talk about Nightmare on Elm Street in the opening. Drew Barrymore says, "Oh yeah, the first one's good, but the rest."
The
suck.
first one, right? Yeah.
And I remember
Except the third one.
Yeah. Love the third one. And then Wes Carpenter, amazing. It's so good.
Damn little shits.
What'd you call me? Huh?
Not your friend.
Also, how funny is it when like Jamie Kennedy is screaming at Jamie Lee Curtis to turn around or whatever, and it's like. There's like this like extra meta layer, obviously, okay, there's like the killer's behind him.
But the music.
And everything off the TV. But like,
yeah,
the character, the actor's name is Jamie, not the character. Yeah. But the actor's name is Jamie. And he's like, turn around, Jamie. All this stuff. Yeah. And he's yelling at the actress in the movie, not the character in the movie.
It's genius. Also, if I've ever related to any character more in a piece of cinema, I think I am Randy in real life.
Yeah,
I am the one at the party who's putting on the movies and shouting rules at people.
He allowed me, and so You were one. I was in high school when this movie came out. So when I was in high school and Randy became like one of the fave characters, like people would talk about him, I actually felt okay talking about my obsession with movies at the time, you know.
You made it okay.
I wasn't the total nerd at that point, but I was still a nerd.
I mean, sure. If you're a fan, you're still a nerd.
Yeah. What's this past tense bullshit?
Yeah, no, I'm total nerd.
There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a horror movie. Number 1, you can never have sex. No. Big no-no!
I think another like interesting aspect of this movie is like, you know, think about where horror movies were leading up to this point in time. Okay, so we've been talking about like how sort of meta this movie is, and it references all these other horror movies, and that's sort of the motivations behind the killings and all these things. But then it also like did this thing that, I don't know, transitioned even horror movies out of what they were in the 70s and the 80s, which is like, you know, it's always like, what was the line?
Some big-breasted girl with that one.
Big-breasted girl.
Yeah.
Oh,
some girl with big boobs. Yeah, I'm sure.
We love that line in this house because the way she delivers that line is in one long breath, and she needs to inhale at the very end because she's so out of breath. It's always the same. Some big-breasted girl who can't act, who's always running up the stairs, and she should be going out the front door. It's insulting.
Right.
Beautiful.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah, round of applause.
Yep.
But yeah, it's like, you know, the big breasted part. I mean, like, okay, well, how do we know that? Well, it's because, like, you know, in all these movies, there's always someone topless, and there's always this sort of like, you know, drive-in sort of sex appeal that would also be somehow mingled with the violence and the thrills of a horror movie. But it's funny how like they kept pointing that out in this, and then they really like went out of their way not to do that. You know, you know, the 2 times Neve Campbell sort of takes off her shirt, they like really sort of block it in a way so we don't see it.
PG-13 relationship.
Also that. I cannot help but think of the Scary Movie moment for that line. But anyway, my God, terrible. But yes, I mean, if you're going to be self-aware about the genre that you're commentating on, you have to do everything you can to not do what you are talking about, right? Like, I've seen it, you know, throughout all the entries of like they'll establish the rules and then they have to break the rules because that's what the franchise does, you know?
Yeah.
So of course we're not going to see that, you know? And it's also, like you said, about how it like ushered in a new generation of like films, in that like after I stopped being 1 years old, and I did my research, I learned that horror was in like a weird place where it wasn't really doing well, and this just breathed new life into the genre. And then of course we saw I Know He Did Last Summer and Urban Legend and you know, all of those slasher films that were super self-aware.
H2O, even like a remake of, like, they brought Halloween into that era then too.
Yep, took it right to a private school.
Did they stop doing nudity and stuff in Halloween?
For a second, because in H2O they were golden, and then I think in Resurrection, I think there is a weird moment in some. They went to a weird direction.
But Busta Rhymes got naked.
Yeah,
that's what I was hoping to hear.
Yeah.
Next week we're watching Halloween Resurrections.
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, it obviously this kind of like set a template for some of this stuff, and I think, you know, and we talked about this before in other conversations, but it's like, you know, not just horror movies, but all sort of movies have kind of like moved away from a lot of that sort of nudity and you know, having the sort of sensuality or sexuality be sort of the draw to the movie. And it was interesting to see how like this one played into that. I mean, I don't know, maybe Wes Craven just didn't do that stuff. I mean, I'm thinking People Under the Stairs. I mean,
he did Last House on the Left, which is sort of
Last House on the Left showed a lot, but after that, no. That was like more of a, because that was more like Sean Cunningham and him kind of doing the like exploitation kind of
and
film.
he's been very vocal about how he regrets a lot of the choices he made in making that movie.
He made a person pee on screen.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, sometimes that's not a great thing.
No. And so I think this was his way of like, I mean, obviously he planted his roots in horror, Nightmare on Elm Street, all of that. And I think this was his way of sort of turning a new page in the horror genre that he helped create in terms of modern horror.
So one other like big thing I wanted to bring up while we're still in the first one, because this will maybe be something we touch on in later Scream or discussions, is the character of the monster here, of Ghostface, right? And it's always interesting, and they did it in the first one, but they continued to sort of amp this quality up as it went along, which is that, like, you know, Ghostface, he's not a supernatural character. It's just one person or two people, depending on which movie we're in. However, seemingly whenever they put on the costume, they gain sort of superpowers. Like they can do the sort of super strength, maybe the ninja abilities to sort of appear and disappear.
Yep.
They can somehow be on the phone in the same room, like in a closet next door, and like no one hears them. Yeah.
You can't bring this stuff up.
And they're like invincible. And like the second they take that thing off, all of a sudden they're mortal again.
Correct.
It's almost as if the costume itself has some sort of like powers or a curse to it or something.
I will say,
although it's not addressed that way.
Well, sure. And we love the idea of like humans are the monsters, right? Mm-hmm. And in
Makes
every
it scarier.
Exactly. And in every film, it's always commentating on what's happening in the world, whatever, and always you believe it, but yes, I agree with you. Suddenly, just picture, could your mom be Ghostface and doing everything, in Scream 2? Or this, like,
exactly.
Teenage girl and blah, blah, blah. But I like to think of it as this one interview that Robert Englund, who plays Freddy Krueger, he once said that when he put on the costume of Freddy, his physicality changed. And suddenly he was meaner and his walk was different and he was stronger. And I think these people, obviously, they have something wrong with the way their brain works if they are going around killing people. That I think that putting on that costume, especially after the events of the first one, knowing what someone in that costume could do, I think that it could trigger some sort of physical change in them. And this is me just sticking up for the idea of like, could that person really do that?
No,
this is horror science, man.
It's horror science.
Yeah.
what you asking for?
Is that it's almost like they never talk about it, but it's almost as if like there are these supernatural abilities that come into it, and you kind of have to accept that that's the case, right? I mean, to make it work. I mean, it's like even what you're describing of like it somehow turns your brain into something. It in a way it's sort of supernatural. It's really interesting because like they talk about all the other like sort of motivations. They talk about all the sort of like all these other like meta circumstances of how these stories go and all that stuff. But like that little bit of it is always just something that's sort of left hanging in the ether that you have to kind of interpret.
But in general, I think the direction given to the stunt player in the Ghostface costume during these scenes, I think he still or she still took quite a beating. And instead of being Jason who could hulk through any sort of obstacle, the Ghostface was still kind of taking some hits and falling down. You can hear him grunt and you can hear like him actually taking. So I think that they still did have a little bit of the human aspect in there, even though he was jumping through windows in the beginning, like literally right through glass windows. Yeah.
You're right though, because it's kind of like become a running joke that like Ghostface is so clumsy and he
falls a lot.
He falls a lot. He gets kicked down and he trips over so many things. I think they even make fun of that. Yeah. They make fun of that in Scary Movie too.
Yeah.
But you're right. So like, we got to balance it out. He can be super strength or Ghostface can be super strength, but
he wouldn't be scary if he couldn't take everybody out.
Correct.
Right? So,
but Ghostface can also be very clumsy. So it balances the scale.
But, unlike maybe Michael Myers or Jason or whatever, like, he's not slow either. He's fast, right? And he'll like, be able to run up on you. But then also, like, he can be hit over the head with a pan and stuff, and
stopped by two closet doors,
smacked with a door. Yeah.
I love that. One of my favorite things is to watch the movies, and I've watched so many video essays of like which killer did which kill. Because it's most of the time two people, so it's like, well, who did this one? Who did this one?
So was that Billy chasing Nev Campbell or Sydney in that? The first time that Sydney is chased because Billy shows up with the cell phone, or is it? Yeah, I
would think so. No, because I'm thinking of when that moment outside of the fountain where Stu says that he was at Tatum's house that night. I think that's after Drew Barrymore's kill. So I think that it was Stu chasing her, and he was there to be like, see, it's not
throw
me.
It off a little bit.
Yeah. Because he was inside making the call.
God, that movie, that's still one of the greatest reveals, though. I think Skeet Ulrich, Billy, when he actually becomes the killer, or like his physicality changes, like you're saying, after he's been stabbed and he's kind of covered in blood in that white t-shirt, and he just kind of turns around and gives the Anthony Perkins line, and it's like, okay, I think that was probably one of the strongest endings of any horror movie, really. It was like, it actually nailed the landing. Scream 2, on the other hand, I don't think really landed the ending. However, I feel like the rest of the movie was a decent sequel. But let's get into it.
I think too, it's very easy for someone to not be scary anymore when they take the mask off, and I agree with you. I think the first one totally nails it in terms of like, oh, I don't trust these guys. They are a little psychotic. I think that they are still scary.
Well, that's also another thing I guess we didn't really touch on, is that, like, I guess unlike most horror movies as well, like, all these movies are structured, and they're actually murder mysteries or whatever in disguise as a horror movie.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, it's primarily this sort of whodunit,
and then there were none.
Yeah, exactly. It's all Murder on the Orient Express and all that. It's like
Agatha Christie,
murder mystery type of thing.
That's the fun. That's the fun of the franchise.
Yeah, and I hadn't seen this in a long time, and yes, I already knew who everybody was, but like watching it again and then watching the little hints and moments where it's like, we see the boots come down, and we see the sort of skirt of Ghostface come down in the toilet, and then 2 or 3 scenes later we see the sheriff throw a cigarette on the ground. We see the same or very similar looking boots crush out the cigarette, and you're like, is it him? Is it him? Is it them?
Oh, great!
It's like all that stuff, and you kind of forget about it because you know what the big reveal is.
It's still great though.
But everyone's a suspect.
I'm saying you forget about how you're thrown off by all that stuff and how you're questioning everything.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, you get so wrapped up, and then so by Scream 2, that both of the killers of the first film are dead. So who could it possibly be this time?
Right.
Ghostface is dead.
What's
right?
the motivation? How can there still be a motivation after all this?
Right. Which you said you don't particularly like the ending, but I thought. I mean, I don't know. I really like Scream 2.
I do too. I like it.
I love that they took it to college. I just feel so bad for Sidney
Scream
Prescott.
goes to college.
Yeah, no, really.
Yeah.
She's got the worst life. Let's be real. Everyone she knows dies or tries to kill her. Well,
don't they call her the Angel of Death eventually in the series?
Yep, yeah, Angel of Death. But Scream 2 is very infamous for having a bunch of different scripts too, of like,
it got leaked.
Who the killer could be, and one of them did get leaked, and it wasn't the final one, which is great because I guess. Okay. I mean, I think I was only 2 by this point, but so I wasn't on the internet. But when you finally find out who the killer is, it makes it fun to go back and with every one of these films to go back and watch it with that lens.
It was just always hard for me to buy that Uncle Buck's girlfriend or one of the girls that was throwing herself at Uncle Buck was going to be the killer. I think Laurie Metcalf in general is an amazing performer. I think she's great.
Sells it, and she nails it, in my opinion.
And rewatching this, like, that's what I was saying. Like, the first time I saw this, I was disappointed. You know, I was one of those guys that was so like into the first movie that any sequel, no matter how good it was going to be terrible for me. You know, like, oh my God, how could they do that to me? But when I saw that, I was like kind of disappointed. But watching it again, she kills like the psycho. Her eyes like change by the end.
Dude, her eyes are terrifying.
Yeah, she's
I know,
great.
It's almost as if they're like moving independently, like kind of googly eyes. It's very strange. And it's like, how'd you do that?
If you are going to be revealed as the killer in a Scream movie, you have to have the eyes. It's important. But one thing that I love about the franchise is that every entry commentates on or talks about horror in that lens. So like this was all about sequels, and it goes by different rules, and that was really fun to like watch unfold.
Plus you get the Randy rules breakdown. You know, they followed that same kind of format, and then love the discussion with the college kids, Terminator 2 better than the first one, or Empire Strikes Back, part of a trilogy, doesn't count.
Yeah. And like even
very funny.
Like my God, just the opening is, I really do love the opening of Scream 2 with the introduction of course Hollywood is making a movie based off of the events of the first film. Of course. But then that just opens the franchise up to be self-aware. When you think about, like, by the time they get to the fourth movie and they say that 8 stab movies have been made or whatever, and all of those are meta as well, so you must think like, okay, they must have made a movie in the stab franchise about the events of, and it's like, it's so Inception deep in there that like you're like, this is amazing because like you keep it meta, and they really double down on it with the introduction of stab. And they can talk as if they are us now because those movies exist in their world too. My God.
I think like Johnny is short-circuited over there.
I'm like sweaty. I'm like, oh my God, who thought of this? Kevin Williamson, you are a genius. I want to work with you so bad.
Kevin, call me.
Please.
Hello?
I love in this one, like didn't they make some reference to the... God, I'm so blowing it, but like, didn't they make some reference to Tori Spelling in the first one? It was like... Or was it in the first one, or was it in the second one?
It's in the first one. Nev Campbell says, with my luck, they'll cast Tori Spelling.
Yeah.
And then in Scream 2, they introduce Stab, and who is playing Sydney? Tori Spelling.
Yeah.
My God.
Tell us about this part you're getting rave reviews for.
Well, I play this young girl, Sydney Prescott, who discovers that her boyfriend's this crazy serial killer.
It's funny to think about in number 2 how the tone just shifted so drastically from number 1. And I mean, number 1 is very scary. And you think about scenes like there's like, okay, there's like the 30-second video delay, or Gail goes to like drive the van and it's like, whoa, what the hell's wrong with this thing? Why can't I see? Oh my God, it's the cameraman's blood. And like, Kenny, and dozens of other examples. Like, so the first one is definitely scary, right? This one felt more like a thriller almost, or it was like it was like scenes of like thriller scenes in between comedic scenes almost. And like, obviously there's gory stuff and everything else that we think of when we think of horror. But I mean, think about how like it feels more like a thriller in the sense that like, it's being played for suspense, and it's like there's the car crash scene where she's like, both of them are having to like climb over the passed out.
I want to see his face.
No.
Yeah.
Never goes well. Never goes well.
Yeah. You could have just shot him, but you had to run away. No, but
that was a great kill, by the way, when the cop gets the that pull through his head. That was amazing.
Oh yeah. I forget about that often, actually. Even
it's
though
brutal.
I've seen it a million times, but like it's just because it's those cop scenes. I always get so. If you're a cop in one of these movies, besides a main cop, you're not gonna make it.
You're gonna get killed, and you're also an idiot.
Fuck Bruce Willis. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, that was the wrong movie. But yeah, or like you think about how Ghostface was chasing Gale through the film school.
The sound booth sequence.
And it's like you see her, and then you see, him sort of, geometrically like running through those different sound booths. And yeah, exactly. And like, it's played more like a thriller as opposed to, oh shit, he's right behind her type of thing, or where is he going to come from? Like, you see where he's at.
Yeah.
And it's being played for more suspense. I mean, even you think about how, like, what I thought was Dewey's murder in number 2.
He's invincible, man.
It takes like 38 stabs to the back. Like, the way that's played, it wasn't played for the horror as much as it was for sort of, both, like, I guess kind of the drama of like, oh no, we're losing a fan favorite character, and then also for the thrills of like, wait, Gale, just turn around, he's right behind you, and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
I wonder if it has to do with the trouble they had with the rating system on the first one, because it like infamously was rated R, and they tried to cut so much out of it to get it a PG-13. And I wonder if maybe that, with a combination of like how just people loved the tone of the vibe of the first film, and like the characters, that they wanted to lean into that more. I mean, you're right. I mean, it still has incredible suspense sequence. I mean, even you think of Randy.
Oh man.
I mean, all of that. I mean, rest in peace, Randy.
That was a fan favorite kill.
And talk about a fan, right? And a lot of people allegedly were very upset. Again, I was 2 years old, but once I found out, I was sad.
Yeah.
But
once you watched it, then you were upset.
Then I shared in their pain.
Yeah. But I mean, that all happens during the daytime, which I thought was interesting. But yeah, I can see what you mean by like how it.
That scene was very suspenseful. That was one of those voyeuristic type scenes. I can see you, you can't see me, and he was looking around trying to find the people with the phone, or the person that was on the phone, and they kept, trying to snatch phones from people, and it was always the red herring, and finally he gets it. It was awful.
Brutal. Especially when you find out who did that murder. Very interesting.
Well, that's I do want to bring that up because, I mean, obviously Scream is famous for having 2 killers, and that was a great twist, the original. And then this one also had the 2 killers. And we know that the Randy killing was Mrs. Loomis. How did I forget that name?
Other horror character.
Yeah, what's wrong with me? Killed Mrs. Loomis. Definitely killed Randy. She admits to that at the end, right? Just straight up. But did Mickey just take out everybody else, or how do you think they broke that up?
I was a little confused on that point, and granted, I've only seen it once, and I must have missed that detail, or I'd forgotten that detail where Laurie Metcalf confesses to being the one to kill Randy. But like, I was under the impression that she, pulled out some Craigslist ads and like hired Timothy Olyphant, and he did all the killing.
Where are these bulletin boards that they were discussing these things on? Like, killer for hire, or
Listen, the 1.0 internet used to be a different place.
Right,
okay?
yeah.
You could see all kinds of crazy shit on there.
Yeah.
The dark web was just out in the open. I left the movie under the impression that Timothy Olyphant was basically the only killer. But that wasn't the case.
She does confess to the killing of Randy when she's in her expository, killing.
Yes. Monologue. When she's monologuing.
Yes, monologuing. Thank you.
I mean, not that she's not culpable, and under RICO laws, I'm sure they'd be able to.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, there's Cece's death as well, which, if you want to talk about horror movie, that I think it does take it back to the Scream roots of like Drew Barrymore, the Sarah Michelle Gellar one, and. If I remember correctly, Mickey was at the party, but then again, I can't picture Laurie Metcalf throwing her off of the balcony. Although I'm not underestimating, I feel like that woman can do many, many things.
Sure.
Listen, as soon as you put on the costume,
right? That
superhuman.
Right, exactly.
But also Laurie Metcalf, I don't know, her performance in that one scares me. I think she can do anything.
It's the sparkles in the costume, by the way. When they show the close-up of the costume, it literally is sparkly. Like
it's sparkly in that one, yeah, for sure.
I never noticed that.
How the hell is a sparkly costume scary? Like they pulled it off.
It looks like this.
Amazing. Yeah. But she also, of course, she does. She shoots.
Visual gag on the podcast.
Yeah. Mickey at the end too, so she does also come.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
Yeah.
She gets a lot of her killings in at the end.
Yeah, but Mickey snaps up after that, right?
Oh, he does have one last moment. Not in my movie. But that's not the line in the second one, right? The second one's a different line. I can't remember what it is now.
Just in case.
So this was a sequel that came out so soon after the first one. I mean, I'm assuming that at least Kevin Williamson had an idea for what this could be, or a sequel, because this one makes as much commentary on sequels as the first one does on, slasher films or like the horror movies. So I'm just wondering if this was like, and if you guys know, if this was like already written, already ready to go, because obviously Scream 3 takes a much different approach. Obviously, there was not many notes for that one, but Scream 2, I feel like they might have had an idea for it already, because it does feel like a proper sequel to the first one, and especially with the commentary that they make.
Yeah, 100%.
I guess I mean, maybe Johnny, maybe but like from what I understood, while they were finishing and doing the publicity for the first movie, they were talking about how they were immediately got greenlit for the second one, and they were just like, yeah, we got to crank this sucker out. And I imagine it was a lot of cocaine and Red Bulls keeping Kevin Williamson up all night.
That's how you make a Scream movie.
And then that's why you get Timothy Olyphant taking 48 rounds to the chest or whatever, and still being able to pop up
screaming.
Oh, dude,
he's awesome in that, man.
Billy was a sick fuck just like you.
No, Billy was a sick fuck who tried to get away with it. Mickey is a sick fuck who wants to get caught. I've got my whole defense planned out. I'm gonna blame the movies.
Kevin Williamson wrote the first one allegedly in 3 days, right? And,
did he really? Is that what they say?
He did. That's how the story goes, and I'm pretty sure that's accurate, because I'm pretty sure he's talked about it. But it was one of those things of like, he needed to get something out. His manager was like, we need something or whatever, and it immediately went into a bidding war. And so I don't think he had much time right off the bat to start planning, a future franchise, because he pounded out the first one so quickly, sort of just flew out of him, but I think you're right. When they were doing publicity or press for the first one, they were already working on the second one, because it came out like a year later. I'm pretty sure it was like a year later.
Yeah.
It did even better at the box office than the first one.
Yeah,
right?
it was huge. Sure. Both the first and second were just massive hits. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's why it's so funny, like seeing the opening of number 2
in the theater.
Yeah, in the theater, like when Omar and Jada get into their seats or whatever, and like you just see the entire movie house just absolutely going nuts. Almost everyone is in the ghost face mask.
Yeah, there's tons
They're
of
all running up and down the aisles, just like throwing popcorn and shit.
Fake knives.
Complete madhouse.
Yeah. Looked fun.
That was for the opening of Stab 1. And
right.
So it was like that enthusiasm was based solely on Gail's book.
No, right.
That's
They saw the news. They saw the news articles of like all of these people were tragically butchered and murdered, and the killer was wearing this mask, and everyone was like, "Hell yeah, I want that mask." You're right.
It's really funny.
I actually tweeted. I was like, "If my theater doesn't look like this for the new Scream movie, then I don't want."
Yeah, I'm leaving.
I showed up in my Ghostface apparel.
Sandra Bullock is playing right down the street.
Nobody want to pay $7.50 to see some Sandra Bullock shit. That she naked.
Oh, but you will sit through a movie called Stab.
I think I must have tuned out a little bit at the end, because like I missed some of those details about Laurie Metcalf's murder involvement, but then I totally forgot that Dewey came out on a stretcher
again,
and we played the Broken Arrow again. So I think I got distracted by the Broken Arrow music, and then like forgot what I was actually looking at, because I went back and rewound it, because like in the third one I was very surprised to see that he showed up all of a sudden. I was like, wait, what? I thought he died. And like it's because I forgot that he had like been wheeled out after miraculously surviving the vicious attack by what was most likely Timothy Olyphant.
Would you say that the music from Broken Arrow enchants you similar to the way that the violin music enchants the monster in Young Frankenstein?
Yeah. Exactly. I can
it enchants me.
Light my thumb like a cigar and not even notice with that music.
So you're not a sequel guy, Jeremy. What did you think of Scream 2? Like, what are your general thoughts?
I didn't like it as much. There are all these like great scenes, like some of the suspenseful scenes that I really loved. I really loved the whole film school scene.
Mm-hmm.
That was awesome. Mm-hmm. David Warner, the theater director.
Yeah.
I mean, he had this like weird cameo.
Yeah.
But
that's also Sydney's like descent into like she wants to be an actor for a second in the franchise. I love that.
Yeah.
I love it.
Well, I mean, that scene was actually kind of great. Like he was great in it. And like, then the sort of build up to the opera scene was also kind of like suspenseful and whatever.
Little Argento nod.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And, it felt like it could have gone in some of those different directions. You could clearly like feel all the filmmakers, the entire team, the actors, the cast, everything, like having a great time making this movie.
Oh yeah.
It like comes across like so like palpably. But, the movie itself, it was a lot of like sort of fun moments and suspense moments, but I don't know, it just didn't have the pop of the original, right? Of like,
mm-hmm.
or my expectations were just that it was going to be scarier than it turned out to be, and like that's not the point of this movie.
That's your problem, are your expectations.
Yeah.
Well, if you thought it was going to be scarier and less funny, then I'm sure you loved Scream 2.
Have we talked enough about Scream 2 that we should segue? I mean, that sounds like a good segue.
We should.
Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on Scream 3, Jeremy, because this is the first time I saw Scream 3 all the way through, because I feel like, so I was you were probably 4 at the time. I was, in college at this point, and I remember going to see this, and I'm sure I was not sober by any means going to see this movie, and I didn't remember any of it. Like, I know I went to see it with some friends. Seeing it again, this was like the first time seeing it. And this is a far departure from the first two films. Like, this feels like a totally different movie that's like outside the world of Scream even.
Well, I mean, Kevin Williamson didn't write it.
Aaron Kruger.
So that's probably step number one.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a hit.
But Kevin Williamson was on fire at this point. Like, hit after hit after hit.
He was fine.
Yeah.
He was doing fine.
He had a bit on his plate.
But he had like a story for Scream 3 and an intention.
With Stu coming back.
But that never came to be.
Stu was supposed to have lived after the Freddy Krueger TV incident in the first one, and he was supposed to be the killer in this one, like masterminding it.
Wow.
Instead it's director Roman of some sort of movie, Stab 3, I believe they're shooting at this point, right?
Yeah. Which I will say, okay, I do love the idea of Scream going to Hollywood. I think, how do you get more meta than that, right?
Yeah.
Like, they're on
especially
set
since they kind of set it up.
Exactly. That's how it should lead into that. Yeah.
Yes. And I think there's, like, such great sequences. And I have this, I wouldn't say it's an issue, but when I watch horror movies, I picture them as haunted houses.
Yeah.
And I think this one would make a fantastic haunted house, especially... you think of the sequences of like...
Well, when she's going through the set and like opens the fake door.
Oh, yeah, like that stuff.
All that stuff.
But like when she's hiding in the props department and like there's all the ghost face masks everywhere.
And the one just steps out.
Like,
I love that.
Yeah, like great.
Yeah.
Love it. But they did introduce something in this one that they never talked about again, which is that Ghostface can replicate anybody's voice.
That was new technology for this one, right? Like... The other one was just one voice that was just...
Yeah, it was like the witness protection program voice. And like in this one, it's like, we can go full Terminator 2. How's Wolfie?
Wolfie's fine, dear.
Your foster parents are dead.
Ghostface can replicate Sydney's deceased mom's voice.
Right.
Yes.
So when did they record that?
Well, no, because she was an actress, so they had some audition tapes.
Right.
There. Well, that's why you don't audition on tape, okay?
I keep wanting to say, yeah,
it's going to replicate me.
Yeah.
I keep wanting to say the name was Rita Miller, but that was the name of the account in Ghost when Whoopi Goldberg takes the money out of the account. It was Rita Miller, but it was Rita something, wasn't it? Sydney's mom's name and her Hollywood starlet name.
Who?
Rena Reynolds.
Scream 3 was like totally worth it for the Carrie Fisher scene.
Yeah, I know that was
love that
was a treat, so right? Like came
hey,
out of nowhere.
Don't you look like?
They tell me that all the time. Wasn't her picture just sitting behind her and framed?
Yeah. Like her headshot
Different
or something
name.
like her from yeah.
But you look just
like her? I've been hearing it all my life.
It's uncanny.
I was up for Princess Leia. I was this close. So who gets it? The one who sleeps with George Lucas.
That's where I feel this movie like tried to go in that direction, but it didn't go all the way in that direction. And I thought that the Kevin Smith or the Jay and Silent Bob cameo was just strange. Like that was, if you're gonna get meta into meta, this is like the Dimension Films cinematic universe, right? Like
exactly. And you know what's funny? I was gonna make a Silent Bob joke when we were talking about the cameraman in Scream 1.
Yeah, he looks just like him.
Has that look, you know?
Kenny, move your fat ass.
God. Yeah, God. Okay. Here we go. We need to talk about this real quick. Gail's evolution as this awful person, like just absolutely destroying Kenny. Like in the first scene we see her, and like, you know, she's just like a complete piece of shit. And like, you know, her slow crawl toward being a good person, and I think it even does so in the fifth one where she keeps continuing to be better and better. But it is funny, like where she started 25 years ago, with, you know, being a complete piece of shit.
She was awesome in the first one. I thought she was hilarious.
Kenny?
Yeah?
I know that you're about 50 pounds overweight, but when I say hurry, please interpret that as move your fat tub of lard ass now!
But we cannot talk about Scream 3 and Gail Weathers without talking about her bangs, her hair. Which
talking about Gail with the dragon tattoo?
Yes. Basically. I watched an interview with her recently where she said that with each movie they tried to make her hair look slightly atrocious to like match her. She still got that like disgusting reporter type of thing, and
cool.
and
sleazy.
Yeah. And the bangs were a happy accident, I guess, for that, because they put them too high and cut it too short, and they were like, well, I guess this is the look for the film. And which is interesting because this is like Scream 3 was sort of like Gail and Dewey's movie rather than Sydney, because Sydney, it does not reunite with the them two until like 50 minutes into the film.
Yeah. Right.
And then even still, she sort of spends a lot of time with Kincaid, Patrick Dempsey, at the police station. So
well, she was like, she had to like sit there most of the movie. It was like, hey, you stay here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know? And with Lance Henriksen being there, you kind of got vibes of maybe they're going to do a Terminator and have Ghostface go crazy.
Please.
Killing 22 cops that night or whatever it was. All right, enough Terminator.
I don't think we can talk about Scream 3 without mentioning the ghost of Sydney's mother dream that Sydney has.
Yeah. Like,
wow.
Almost Evil Dead-ish.
Wow.
The way she was appearing.
That came out of nowhere.
They tried some things with this one.
Oh, it's an experimental film.
I will never slander a Scream movie. However, I will talk about critique if you... No, they definitely went... And you can feel there was some different people getting their hands on the movie. Mm-hmm. It's the most quirky of them all. I mean, although Parker Posey is like so...
The best.
She's amazing in it.
Yeah.
She's so good.
Yeah.
When she jumps into Patrick Warburton's arms...
Like, you sort of have to like embrace it at some point where you're like, okay, this is what we're doing for this movie. I guess Sydney's mom is haunting her now.
Yeah. I did kind of feel like they couldn't figure it out. Like there was something there, but I do agree with you that if they went the route of being Gail and Dewey's adventure, I think that they would have had more success with that, instead of just kind of tacking on that Sydney is the target of this person and they're trying to get her out of hiding, you know, and it's a little too like convoluted in my opinion.
Also just like tone-wise, it like shifts drastically again.
Yeah.
You know, I kept getting like Lethal Weapon vibes every once in a while, especially when the fucking house blew up.
Right, yeah.
Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, and you know how Lethal Weapon would go from, you know, being very self-serious to being very comic to then, you know, being a little schmaltzy, and like, you know, like the music in Lethal Weapon was that, you know, like that really like, you know, like soulful sax thing.
Yeah.
But in this one, it was like, you know, kind of like, if we had a made-for-TV movie version of some of those songs to like, I don't know, draw out emotions that aren't there type of thing. And so in that sense, like the movie had some of that almost soap opera type moments, which in a meta way is kind of interesting because the movie is taking place in Hollywood. It gets out of the smaller towns of, you know, Woodsboro and I don't know, wherever, college in Ohio or something. And, you know, does this thing where, like, you know, we start off with Cotton Weary on the phone, you know, talking about, I'm not going to take $1 million deal. That's bullshit. Like, you know.
Wasn't he a host of a show at this point, too? Like a kind of a more
100%
downy?
Cotton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What a great name for a show. That's
amazing.
Clever. Yeah.
The movie gets an A+ just for that name alone.
Yeah, I agree.
Of course you have to name it that.
I think it comes by on a bus too. You see like
there's like there was a big like when he's like driving real fast back home because he knows his girlfriend's in danger. The camera like whip pans to a billboard just that says 100%.
That's what it was.
Like, all right.
Yeah, I was like, leaned into
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Because we kill off Cotton in this one. I think that it's probably my least favorite opening of the whole franchise.
Yeah.
They do introduce the voice thing there in the opening, which is good.
And they do this weird thing of like, what I feel like is changing Cotton's character. So in number 2, we didn't talk about this really, but like the whole time you're supposed to be kind of suspecting, wait, is it Cotton Weary the whole time?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then it turns out, no, it's not. It's this convoluted thing. But in this one, we see Cotton's girlfriend is like, "Hey, wait a minute, are you playing Psycho Killer again or something?" Like it's like a sexual like role play thing.
Yeah,
I'm like,
this is not the first time. Yeah, this has happened before.
That's something they do.
Yeah, wow.
Get the fuck out of here.
That's hot.
Yeah.
Also, props to him for literally having a 3-second cameo in the first one with no dialogue on a TV screen.
Yeah, he was like on the news.
Becoming a prominent figure in the franchise.
He was B-roll, and he was like this important person.
Yes, and then he became main character in Scream 2 and then gets the opening kill in Scream 3. I mean, damn. So what a pipeline.
Well, I think, you know, we've mentioned a couple things that kind of make Scream 3, you know, worthy of making despite some of its downsides. For me, it's like, okay, this is the last movie of the 90s. Now, it came out in 2000, and but it was, you know, sort of conceived of and filmed in the 90s. And, you know, it's still obviously, you know, 2000 all the way to the end of the year obviously still felt like the 90s anyway. But anyway, it's like, you know, this movie has that thing where it's like there's sort of this dividing line between the sort of 90s screams and then, shall we say, the 21st century screams, the like the requels.
Mm-hmm.
And like you were saying a minute ago, Johnny, like the idea of like each Scream movie sort of embodying its own time. This one does that, but it also has a certain propheticness that perhaps some of the other ones like didn't have. And it comes in like a really throwaway line, but for me it was like it really stood out when so Gale comes to the set, the actual Gale, and, you know, is being greeted by all the actors playing all these other characters that, you know, she would know in real life. And the hunky guy that got to play Dewey, you know, like came up to like give Gale a bunch of shit, and, you know, he starts off by throwing back in her face like a quote she said, presumably on some other episode or whatever of her TV show, which was
pop culture is the politics of the 21st century.
God damn it, was that right on the nose?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, and you think about how much more it's become that since this movie came out.
Yeah.
Screams have always been ahead of their time with their commentary. And Scream 4 was a testament of that, just saying. But we'll get there.
Yeah. Yeah. And preview the next episode. But yeah, it's like, to me, this is one of those lines that, like, you know, it really, like, it said a lot more, and it was just a throwaway thing, but it said a lot more than you'd think, just hearing it as sort of a little one-off right before, you know, I don't know what, he was trying to wind her up and, you know, get her to punch him or something. But, like, God, it was great.
Are you parked in the lot? Because I should check to make sure that nobody's messed with your brake line.
This one also got to crack open the Stab franchise up until that point, which I always love when they do, when they're like, when they like just briefly mention like who played who in this movie.
Yeah.
This movie is always so great, and they have continued that.
Was this the one with Luke Wilson in it, or was that?
Well, no. So that was
in
2. So like, yes, that was in 2, and so like Luke Wilson, Tori Spelling, Heather Graham, like those were like Stab 1 and 2, and then in Scream 3, because no one had been killed since Scream 2, they're going to make up their own new story for Stab 3.
Right.
So the original cast members didn't want to come back for that, so they just like, except for Parker Posey, so they all like, they get recast. But then they established later on in the franchise that Scream 3 happened, so Stab 3 was based off of Scream 3, and the original cast members came back. It's oh god,
wow.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
I love those shots of Owen Wilson or Luke Wilson playing Billy Loomis, though. Like real.
Oh, amazing.
Kind of brooding.
Yeah. And the
I told you,
is always
Sid, I was in
slightly
prison.
off.
How could I have called you?
He goes. That's just in Scream. Billy Loomis says like, oh yeah, like, and that's just the way it is. And then in the Stab, he goes, and that's just the way the cookie crumbles. It's when they do that is the best.
Oh God! Speaking of that scene, like, to rewind it all the way back to the first one again, like, how funny was that scene of like Billy being like, "Hey, what's your deal, Sid? Why aren't we fucking? Your mom died a year ago. What's the big deal?"
It's been a year. You know, when my mom left my dad, I got over it. I was fine with it.
Yeah.
Such a dick.
Yeah.
Is your brain leaking? My mom was killed. I can't believe you're bringing this up.
I know, it's been a year.
Tomorrow.
I know what. I think it's time you got over that. I mean, when my mom left my dad, I accepted it. It's the way it is. She's not coming back.
I think, okay, so in Scream 2, we got my favorite thing, which is that they're playing the Broken Arrow theme song for Dewey every time we see him. In this one, in Scream 3, though, they, I don't know what, did their own version of it. Because it wasn't the same song, but they had it's a similar sounding song, but it's not the Hans Zimmer version. And apparently, in Scream 2, when they were using that temp score, they had the composer, do a sort of Dewey's theme, and the composer thought, oh, they're going to use that in Scream 2, but they didn't end up using it. They ended up sticking with the temp music. But maybe they used the Dewey's theme that he wrote for Scream 3.
Could be.
Because it wasn't Broken Arrow in Scream 3.
This is the conspiracy that I'm here for.
Yeah. Or it's like, Scream 2 was so rushed because they were trying to get it out so fast that, like,
we don't have time.
Some note got missed.
There's also that one licensed track that's in it that it like ends with his red right hand.
Yeah.
You know that song? So that song's in the first 2 movies. And then in the third movie, if you listen to the lyrics, it almost comes to like a conclusion of the story of the song.
That song I play in the car all the time. They sync that song up to Dewey slamming the police car door in the first movie on the dum. Yeah. And it gives me chills. It electrifies me. And it's everything I love about the franchise.
Right before he has that big long conversation with the sheriff, and he's eating ice cream while the sheriff smokes a cigarette.
But I'm so happy that song became like a fan thing and that it stuck through the franchise because it makes its way all the way through the franchise.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the killer. You mentioned Scream 3's killer. The departure from the dual killers.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so this one was there was only a single killer in this one, right?
One killer, yeah.
Yes.
I wasn't wrong about that this time, right?
Right.
No. Which in itself, I guess, is a twist.
Yeah.
And this is the one, too. I mean, we got a Randy cameo through the form of a vlog before vlogging was a thing.
If you're watching this, I'm dead.
Hey, just in case I got killed in the second one, I'm going to record this real quick.
Amazing. And he states that there's new rules for trilogies. So for the third part, it's going to go back to the past, and you're going to find out something that you never thought of before. That like challenges everything that you thought you knew, and
further backstory.
Boy, do they challenge everything that you thought you knew.
Yeah. Because
in this one, it is Sydney's half brother. Because surprise, her mom wanted to be a Hollywood actress. And ended up having an unwanted child, and that is Sydney's half-brother.
Yeah, and they went the Halloween 2 route. It was really odd.
Yes.
And it was Lance Henriksen supposed to be the father?
No, he had nothing to do with it.
Oh,
they just, I mean, they put him up as one of the villains, you know, the suspects for sure, but...
Yeah.
It was in the 70s. Everything was different.
The finale takes place at the big mansion, right, for Roman's birthday.
Yeah.
He's really sabotaging his first big gig.
Yeah.
By the way.
Yeah. Could have rode the wave a little bit. Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, sure. Yeah, make the movie first, and then do it on the next one.
Yeah. Kill him in the third
one. You
one.
won't need to kill. Yeah. He also mentions that he's the one who, sort of masterminded Billy and Stu.
Right.
And then they never talk about that again.
Yeah, I feel like they just needed to add another connection there. That's the convoluted stuff. You know, it's just too many layers. They just got confusing.
That's true. Every time we get to the like whodunit scene, you know, things that kind of slow down so we can explain all that, and it's always complicated as hell. In this one, it was so complicated that I started to tune out a little bit. It was a little like it was more like a telenovela.
Right. They should have offered a family tree or something, you know, to follow along with.
Let me show you this diagram.
A little pamphlet. They give you a pamphlet.
Found this in the archives of the mansion.
Yeah.
It's a strange episode of Finding Your Roots.
Yeah, you're right though, because the who. Or I mean, the why is almost as important as the who. You know, like the motive is always for me is the most interesting thing, and this one he's the disgruntled, unwanted child, and Sydney got all the love, and now he's back for revenge.
I would have much rather they just wrote Stu back in, but I guess Matthew Lillard might have been busy or something and didn't work out.
I'm gonna say that he's still alive. I want to see him in Scream 6.
Yeah.
Give me that. In fact, I actually saw on YouTube, because Scream fans were crazy, and it was like a mock trailer for Scream 5, like 2-3 years ago, whatever. And there's a picture of Matthew Lillard, and his face is all burned, but he's an adult. And they want you to think that like the new movie has like him coming back or whatever. I'm like, oh my god.
That sounds like a good killer.
I'll be right back.
Johnny, thank you so much for joining us yet again. Do you have anywhere that people can follow you, or how would you like people to follow you?
Well, sure. Not in the street, I'll tell you that. But
not
you can
closely.
Follow me online, not closely, at a distance. At Johnny Berchtold on everything. You got Instagram, Twitter, TikTok if you're a casting director, IMDb. And that's that.
Your clips on TikTok are pretty great, man.
Perfect.
Thanks. We have fun over there.
It's very fun. Next time, we are going to be talking, of course, Scream 4 and Scream 5. Just keep this rolling here. Five movies.
We didn't get enough this time.
Yeah, exactly. There's never enough Scream. I'm sure Johnny would agree with that.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Nah. Not at all.
We all go a little mad sometimes.
No, Billy!
Fuck!
Thank you so much for listening. Please make sure to subscribe and follow us on all the podcasts and social platforms at the Grindhouse Institute. And if you really want to give us a boost, check us out on Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and review. It helps us to get noticed. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll be back next week.
Ciao.
What's your favorite scary movie?
What's the point? They're all the same. Some stupid killer stalking some big-breasted girl who can't act, who's always running up the stairs when she should be going out the front door. It's insulting.